Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. I am Michael Forrest.
And I am Ivanka Maich.
And this week we are doing a podcast about money. We haven't even spoken to each other yet.
No.
We were like, we best press record first.
Just in case we say something
otherwise,
good.
Exactly, we don't want to waste any conversation. It's valuable content.
So how are you, Michael? Are you better?
I am. I've had a bit of a I went back home for Christmas and saw my massively growing sort of like family. I have two recent nieces and a nephew, and all sorts of partners are involved with all of my sort of siblings, of which there are quite a few to start with. And somewhere along the way I seem to have picked up something that has had me feeling very ill for quite a few days now. So I'm sort of on the outside. I'm recovering from that now. I think I'm all right, but I kept thinking, I'll be fine tomorrow, and then 2 days later it's still kind of bad. But yeah, I'm sort of a little bit fragile, a little bit weakened. How about you?
I'm not weakened. I'm quite well, actually. I've had I have attacked one of the loquat trees with a saw.
Oh, really?
It's one of them. Well, I didn't. I supervised the attacking of one of the loquat trees with a saw, but it has opened up a great deal of light to the garden, but we haven't destroyed it, so we're quite pleased with the results.
You attacked its arms?
Yeah, we made it looks a bit more sculpted now rather than just a tree that has been allowed to grow freely and widely. It's now more of a Mohican loquat tree, but looks good. And I chose a kitchen. Well, we chose a kitchen yesterday, and so I was reminded of our conversation about how stressful doing building work is. Because what's very stressful is committing to something that's going to cost you a few £1,000, and you've got to make a choice based on a few little squares and scraps of material on a thing that you're going to have to look at for at least, hopefully, the next 20 years.
I don't feel like I really understand money, or I'm really very good with money at all. To be quite honest, like I sometimes spend some time trying to get my head around things, but I think my habits are quite bad. Maybe I'm not unusual in this, but I sort of think the first time I really wanted something. I got a job as soon as it was possible because I wanted this computer as a kid, so as soon as I was 13, I started paper rounds and doing that, and then I saved up some money, but then to get my computer sooner, there was some money was found to sort of lend me that I could then pay back to sort of have the computer sooner, and I think that's formed the basis of my habits since then. It's like, well, I know I'm going to have the money for this, so I'll just sort of just go into the little debt window a little bit so that I can have it sooner and use it, rather than just spend money that I definitely have now.
Well, I think that's my.
Are you judging me?
I am judging you. I'm judging you on your borrowing money habit. I think I have certainly had the borrowing money habit because, and part of mine was formed. So the year I went to university was the first year that you could have some form of student loan, which was quite small. So like you, I've had jobs since I was 13, or always earned my own money. But I found it eliminated a lot of discussion with my father about what clothes I should be wearing if I bought them myself. I got this talk from my father quite early on the why you should do your homework and study, was that, Ivanka, life is harder for women. You need qualifications and you need to be independent and you need to be able to earn money, and your brother will always be able to dig the roads if he needs to earn money, but you are not physically strong enough to do that, so you need to get some qualifications, was his almost verbatim discussion with me. So I had this drilled into me. And then when we were at university, they brought out these student loan things. And I had a cleaning job all the way through uni. Every day I did 3 hours cleaning. And then they brought out these student loans, which was something like £1,200 or something like that. And my dad was like, at a very low interest rate. He was like, if you study electronic engineering and you can't pay back £1,200, then you might as well not bother studying, was his argument. Take the money and go travelling. So every summer for 3 years, I would use my student loan to go travelling under it was kind of money I was going to have in the future, and I didn't need to start paying this particular debt off until I had it, until I was earning the money. So it seemed like very safe debt. But I'm not sure how wise that advice was or not. But anyway, I had a lot of fun. And that was all. And then I had that whole post-uni thing of living in an overdraft. I mean, I don't know who didn't. I don't know. But I'm a bit more apprehensive about it all now.
Well, you've got some responsibilities as well.
I did run up. I've never had so much debt that it was unmanageable. But I've had enough debt that it's bothered me. So
it's a good feeling that day when you're debt free. But then you're like, okay, now what?
Then there's this whole sort of mortgage debt versus loan debt or credit card debt, or there's different levels of debt. And mortgage debt is sort of treated as acceptable debt.
There's so much is built on debt now, isn't it? Because I got one of the last student grants. I think I was before Tony Blair's did his horrible, getting rid of grants, and yeah. So that's now the student debt is just this thing that everyone has to have, like masses of. And yeah, like mortgages are this thing that everyone's supposed to get. It seems like states are just routinely in horrendous debt. And it's just like, how does it, that doesn't seem right.
Well, I think the new student loan debt is criminal.
Yeah,
to be
no,
honest.
absolutely.
Starting your grown-up life, £30,000 in debt or more, and that's just for your fees.
Yeah.
It's just unimaginable to me. I think, these argument that it makes it doesn't make it inaccessible is just nonsense.
I don't know if I could have done it I don't know if I could have done university if it had been for that. Like, I don't know how I would have done it.
I don't. I mean, I know. I think in my case, so I nearly had to pay foreign student fees because if you are a citizen of the United Kingdom, but you have not been living in the United Kingdom for at least 3 years, this was the rules at the time, for at least 3 years before you start university, you are classed as a foreign student. So I was nearly facing £10,000 a year fees. In my case, I would have simply have postponed starting. There's no way I would have gone into... but in my case, the simple solution was waiting a year. I didn't want to wait a year, but I would have. But there was no conversation in which it was okay to pay £10,000 a year to go to uni. I was just not entertained in my house. But I know if you take somebody like my husband, who's the first child in his family to go to university, sort of coming from Derbyshire coal mining stock, they would not, his father would not have signed off on him borrowing money to go to university. You know, he does not borrow money. He doesn't use a credit card. He uses a credit card, but it gets paid off in its entirety every month. Doesn't use an overdraft. He's very, you don't spend money you haven't got type. And that's been drilled into him by his family. So,
yeah,
you know, this, I think it's a, but yeah, debt's a tricky thing. We haven't chosen the easiest subject or the jolliest.
We haven't. No.
No.
But
I think it's...
Well,
it's
let's make this more
contentious.
jolly. If you had all the money in the world... well, let me tell you about my...
What you would do if you had all the money in the
when
world.
I was a kid, my plan was get super famous as a rock star, make millions and millions of pounds like that, because that seemed like a realistic idea then. And sometimes I think perhaps the danger of growing up in the provinces and learning things from TV has maybe skewed my expectations of reality a little bit wrongly, but you know, it's too late to worry about that now. Anyway, so I was going to make all this money, and then I was going to use that, funnel that back into nanotechnology research and like making films and stuff as well, but mainly like this basically life extending nanotech research, and then that was going to be my legacy, as well as obviously, you know, all this kind of, but you know, I wasn't going to get sucked into sort of like hedonism and all that. It was all going to go back into sort of you know, improving the human race and solving death kind of thing. And you know, just ever, you know, my sort of adult life has been a process of slowly letting go of those different goals. But you know, one of the reasons I mean, still, when you called me up and said, do you want to stop contracting and come and work for this billionaire, Mark Shuttleworth at Canonical, and make this open source thing, I was like, oh, this will be a good opportunity to learn, you know, when I'm super rich, like how to do it, like what to do. That's genuinely one of the reasons that I was like, oh, well, it'll be interesting to sort of see how that works, you know, with someone who's actually doing it. Have you ever had any big sort of...
I personally never had these sort of... I was thinking about it when you said that, because my sister had this thing where she was going to become wealthy, and once she was wealthy, then she was going to go into politics, because then she wouldn't be corruptible, was her logic.
Okay, right, that's...
I think particularly with Balkan politics in mind.
Okay.
And I was just thinking, and I didn't know if this was somehow... I was just thinking about the fact that I've never really had this big view since when I was I think pre-leaving Yugoslavia, I had wanted to come back to England to study, because I wanted to come to England. I wanted to be British, more British again. Growing up in the Balkans was brilliant as a kid, but you know, it's a bit different. So I wanted to come back to the UK, and that's really as far as I don't even know if I had any bigger dream, which sounds a bit, I don't know, does that sound a bit sad?
Have you ever had that, you know, if I won the lottery, which by the way I find one of the most upsetting, depressing utterances that I hear from someone. When I win the lottery, I'm going to do this and that. Like, that's no way to look at things.
I think my expectations that I'm ever going to get free money are really low. I think that I am. What I'd like to do is, that sort of basic. I'd like to have my basic income covered by some sort of unearned like by some investment, by something, so that then I could just do projects that I want to do. And some of those would be certainly for profit, some would be charitable, some would be, it's just that sort of, I like doing projects, I like doing things, and often earning a living gets in the way of that. So it's kind of similar to what you're talking about with your music. It's how do you cover off your basic bills and food so that then you can do stuff that's interesting and you like doing.
Yeah, that's one why I've always been sort of attracted to sort of fields where you could potentially sort of continue earning on just something that's sort of like doesn't have sort of scalability problems. So I wouldn't get into sort of like a business of selling things because you always have to kind of keep that going and expand and bring the infrastructure. But something like music was attractive, or even making apps, because the idea is you just if it did take off, it could suddenly be a huge amount of money. But yeah, those areas are very competitive, and actually, the more I learn, the more it most of the time it is that you get out what you put into these things. And the reality of apps and music is like the marketing is where all the money goes, and if you're not marketing and spending a lot of money and time and effort on marketing of either your app or your album, then you're just it's not bringing you any money in. And to find something that is genuinely sort of autonomously kind of earning you money, I don't know how, I thought that was something that I could do, but it's never something I managed to pull off. I mean, even my apps that I sell a few apps a day that I haven't probably touched the code of for 2 years at this point, and I still make like, I don't know, 100 quid a month on average from like doing nothing now. So it's sort of like paid for the time that I invested at my rates, I think, at this point. But it's still like, if I was actually marketing and continuing development to sort of expand it and sort of grow it, because it's going to die off at some point. I think they don't work that well with iPhone 10 and stuff like that. But the goal is royalties forever, and be able to focus on something else.
But I think there's two things in what you're talking about. One is I think that sales and marketing are grossly underestimated, both as a skill and as an activity. I certainly, in days of working in consultancies, rolled my eyes many times listening to salespeople selling things, and having to suffer that whole, you told them it's going to take how long to build what? Are you kidding? And doing all that rowing with salespeople and listening to them sort of with their patter and stuff. But slowly I've learned to respect that, because I am not very good at selling. I'm not really, I think I don't really know how to close a sale without just giving things away. It's like, it's not my area of expertise at all. And when it comes to marketing things, it just requires, sales and marketing requires this persistent, ongoing activity. And that, because I was thinking that when you said it, and then it reminded me of this TED talk I watched, which was that sort of like, in order to have a successful business, you needed 3 skills. So one was financial, one was the actual thing, the skill in the area, the design, the code, the whatever, and then it was understanding money, understanding the thing, and then sales and marketing type stuff. And the argument was that you could always find 2 of those things in a single person, but rarely all 3.
I think I've only got one of them.
Well, he gave the example of, even Richard Branson's book or something. Richard Branson always talks about, even though he is absolutely the front figurehead of all the Virgin activities, he always in his book talks about we. when we
Right.
started Virgin, because he didn't sit there on his own in a room and start it up. They had people with other skills around him.
Can you
I
remember?
believe he also had some money.
I might.
I will find the talk.
I might. Just insert
Yeah.
the name of that talk. Ernesto Ciroli, shut up and listen. There we go.
I enjoyed the way you put
it.
in that book title last time.
Well, I just did it again. So
yeah. Anyway, that talk was brilliant.
It's sponsored by TED Talks, not sponsored by. It's a perfectly good way of getting information.
You've got people like J.K. Rowling, who's made a shitload of money and who deliberately makes a point of staying onshore and paying her taxes as somebody, and he's quite vocal about it, as somebody who has benefited from the welfare system in the past. And there's an interesting thing I experienced when I was doing work with the Labour Party, is that there is such a thing as a socialist millionaire. There are people, and they are. I've met a couple of them, and they are, like one guy grew up single in Grimsby, single mum, benefited from free school meals and from free education and from all those things that come with a good welfare state, with good socialist influences, and. But he's a very successful businessman who made a lot of money, and there is something in some people. I don't know how to phrase this without. So there's the conflict of this kind of crowdfunding socialist democracy where everybody pays a little bit, and having a single wealthy donor who then is at risk of influencing. That is the thing people are worried about. Right. Is that a wealthy donor, a wealthy socialist comes along, drops a load of cash and then wants to influence policy. And I don't think that's necessarily true, that people will automatically do that. And I don't see that being wealthy or having a successful business is in any way in conflict with socialism at all, or socialist ideals, where by socialist ideals I take that a sort of standard definition of community above self. It's not communism where everybody shares and everybody gets an equal part of the pie regardless of how much effort they invested, but socialism that doesn't, where it simply says that everybody has a right to education, everybody has a right to healthcare, all that sort of, and the health of a community influences my health as an individual. So that I think there's some quite interesting things when you come to looking at people with masses of wealth, and how some of them seem to think that it's like, even if you look at Bill Gates now and the amount of money he gives away to charity, he started giving away a lot of money to charity, or seems to have. I don't know him personally. Now that he has accumulated a great deal of wealth, at this point, he has now set up these trusts, and now he gives away money to things that he deems to be important. So it's not society deciding, it's the causes and the things that he's interested in. And it may well be that he and his wife are very sensible people and they make very sensible decisions, and I haven't really heard anything to the contrary. But why I think there's something a bit peculiar about opting out of paying taxes in order to give money to charity. I find that odd, and I find that somehow.
Well, I mean, my first reaction, I know this isn't productive, but I don't know. I just I think having worked in the public sector and seeing that, and this is very problematic.
It is.
Because having worked in the private sector, like in the public sector kind of 10, 15 years ago, and been immensely frustrated with the inefficiencies and the waste and just the absolute kind of like the kind of the stagnant kind of like stalled out bureaucracy that was happening there, but obviously that's been perceived within the kind of corridors, and now they've been like, oh well, the private sector does a better job, so now they've sort of privatized loads of stuff, but that's got so many of its own problems as well. That, you know, I can sort of understand why someone might go, okay, well, let's do this privately and try and spend the money wisely, but like then, you know, it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, isn't it? And like, is it possible? And you're much closer to this than I am, but you know, my experience of it was like, and it comes back to this: how do we make a system that actually works instead of one that's like just caked layers and layers of sort of bureaucracy and kind of like things to patch problems upon problems to patch things, like these massively overcomplicated systems where identities are just, people don't even, you know, identity is this weird variable that makes things completely open to kind of you know, like sort of paranoias about kind of cheating the system and all this kind of stuff. I sort of just, I hate how I don't know, it's too big to try and solve, but I can sort of understand why people go, oh well, at least I can see where the money's going when it's private. And I'd like to say I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I maybe I'm being conservative. I don't know.
I think there's I don't know. Have you ever read or followed anything that Simon Wardley's written? He used to work with us at Canonical.
Not really.
And he does these mapping exercises. And he and I had this conversation relatively recently about the fact that, about this whole concept of waste and inefficiency in the public sector versus the private sector. And he... I don't know if he'd mind being quoted, I might need to check, but he talks about the fact that based on his experience of going through and doing these mapping exercises in organisations, the inefficiencies in the private sector far outweigh any inefficiencies in the public sector, sort of 90 to 60% type thing, whereas one could argue that 60% inefficiency is still very high, but the public sector can't get away with it like the private sector can, because they're being audited all the time. And I don't know what machines are so stupendously efficient that there is no waste.
And maybe, it might not be a waste thing even. It's more like where does the money go in the private sector? It's just sort of a lot more grotesque.
Well, I think, well, I think there's that. I mean, and when you suggested that we talk about money, I expected us to be talking about personal money more than sort of organisational money. But it's that same thing. The word grotesque, I think, is quite interesting because compared to where I was as a child financially and where I am now, and where lots of people I know, or, you know, thinking about the enemy, some of the things I spend money on, I think verges on the grotesque. It's like, why the hell do I need to spend that amount of money on a laptop or a projector, or because I do, or a bicycle? I mean, you know, in my own head, these things are, I buy the best I can afford for the job, and I know I'm buying something that will get a lot of use, so I kind of calculate things on price per use rather than initial outlay. So if I'm not going to use it, I don't really, but there's something about the word grotesque, and you look at, you know, the money people spend on, I know somebody who spent 20,000 euros on a kitchen. I'm like, and I've just bought a pretty good, decent spec kitchen with all appliances for about £3,900, and that's, you know, it occupies, it's a 4.5 metre long space, do your own calculations, but, you know, dishwasher, hob, oven, and you just think, 20,000 euros, what the fuck can this kitchen possibly do? that it makes it worth 20,000. That's enough to live off for a year.
Do you think it's crossed the line into sort of like status things being part of it? Like, look, there's marble. Look, or is that even is marble better?
I don't know, granite, marble. I don't know. I mean, I certainly haven't gone for anything. And then you've got this whole and there's some things like in the way we're doing up this house here, we are spending extra on insulation to make the building itself more, have a lower environmental impact. Is that grotesque? I don't know. But there's something. The word grotesque triggers something in me when it comes to money, because I think some of the ways people spending can be so wasteful to the point where I think it can be grotesque. And that's not, you don't have to be wealthy to do that. You just have to be willing to spend a shed load of cash. And it's like flipping the bird to all these people that can't afford stuff. It's like, yeah, you can't afford to eat, but hey, look at my car.
Put another bread in my bread bin. Got to find another way to find another bitter downside. Got to find another bread to put in my bread bin. I'ma put another bread in my bread bin. Inside, upside down, put another bread in. Put another bread to the left and another bread in my bread bin. I want another bread for my bread bin. I want another bread for my bread bin. I should live.
There are taboos in talking about money. It's strange what they are, but also this idea of you shouldn't count other people's money, which I think is sort of like good advice in a way. But is that different to when people are being kind of like flagrant with their spending to try and show you how much money they've got?
Counting other people's money. Is it any of my business how much somebody else spends on something? It isn't any of my business, and I don't in any way wish to count other people's money, and I don't. But maybe I have empathy because in a different way. Maybe I'm being kind of empathetic to myself as a child. I was jealous of people that had loads more pocket money or loads more clothes, or and I couldn't understand why. I don't mean I wouldn't say that I couldn't understand why we didn't have any. That wasn't my point. Like, we had wealthy relatives who'd like give me a £5. But what the fuck? What am I going to do with a £5? I know you're minted, but then that's fine. That's their choice to spend their money on what they want to. But my little kid's brain felt that was unfair in some way. I don't know.
Yeah, it is certainly unfair. Like how some people have got much more money than other people, and it's also it's massively unfair, but it's also kind of fun to as soon as you kind of like I do this. I type in a celebrity net worth. I type that in every couple of weeks probably. I'm like, how much is, because I just want to know how much is that guy worth then? Like I just sort of like, and because it's this weird sort of scorekeeping system that it's hard not to like be like, I'm just going to secretly, and this is like, I'm not proud of it.
No, it's the whole taboo about talking about money and knowing what other people are earning. And again, to sound like my father for a moment, this is how the capitalist system controls the proletariat, by telling us it's not okay to talk to each other about how much we're getting paid.
Well, I've always known you to be someone without qualms about like having those conversations. So I was like, is this going to be a strange episode?
No, I'm not going to throwing figures broadcast my net worth to the or my lack of net worth or my day rate to the world. But this idea that, so for example, one of the reasons so I have read a couple of books about money, particularly in the context of women and money. But one of the reasons that women continue to be underpaid is because we are told not to talk about money. So I do have a group of close female friends that we discuss our day rates and how to negotiate, and to make sure that, and we egg each other on, because frankly it's only very recently that I have been able to just coldly and calmly go, no, that is my day rate and it's not negotiable. Either that's what you pay, or I don't come and do the project. That's it. And it's taken, and I have taken pay cuts before because I was misguidedly believed that the project was worth it, the job was worth it. And the reality is, it's so hard to build up to a salary that if you take a pay cut, it just takes a bloody long time to build it back up again. And I think that we do need to be we do need to be more aware of what we're being paid, what market rates are, what's the going rate, and there's no shame at all in being aware of what your labour's worth.
Yeah, people, you got to like have that conversation, haven't they? Everyone's got to have that conversation.
Yeah. Talk to your friends. I was reading this book called something, I think it's called Love Is Not Enough, by a woman whose name I can't remember.
Merrin Somerset Webb.
And she talked about, but it was for women about money, and it talked about the things like women don't discuss investments, women don't discuss their salaries. It discussed all these things about how much effect the pay gap can have on you over a lifetime, all these kind of things. And it prompted me to send an email to 2 or 3 of my female friends, sort of like on a circular email, going, right, these are my investments, this is what I do with my money, if you want to share, please do. And so we had a little bit of a chat about, buy-to-lets and what sort of mortgages we're on and all these kind of things. But if you don't talk about these things, how the hell are you going to learn? So I do find now that I'm just more comfortable talking about money and not accepting that because a project's cool that I should get paid less. Yeah, I'm trying to now finish that sentence properly, because I'm thinking particularly about going to work for Canonical. I took a pay cut to go there, and I don't know why. I just thought it's open source, it's cool, I really want to do it, so I let myself be negotiated down. Which I actually regretted.
Yeah, because you're still doing the work. You're going to work harder, if anything, aren't you? So, they're going to get more work. Why should they pay less?
The weird, on the other thing about money, the other side of it is that whilst the absence of it is crippling, I'll use that word, or worrying about it can be very debilitating, I don't find the presence of it motivating.
No.
If you said to me, here's 10,000, 20,000 pounds, if we did it, la la la, but is this? Am I going to be embarrassed of this thing, or am I going to be proud of my project? That the sort of knowing that I'm doing good work is for me far more rewarding and motivating than money on its own ever could be.
Yeah, like money has never been like if I'm at that point in a project or in a job, like that never even that kind of like, oh, can we pay you X amount more? That's just never even. I don't care. Like, you can offer me whatever. Like if I'm on the way out, I'm on the way out, and it's not. Money's not going to change it. Money,
I don't know if I'd be different now. I mean, I have all those moments in my life have been when I've been, pretty footloose and fancy free, either single or not cohabiting and sharing finances, because those sort of decisions aren't mine alone anymore now. If my husband or I want to storm out of a job, we actually need to talk to each other about it. Sort of go, it's a bit more of a, and we do on that topic. We do talk about, we talk about shared finances. We had this very grown up conversation when we first met, because I moved into his house, so we agreed that I would pay half his, half the bills, obviously. And he said, but if you live here for a year or so, then we break up, the half the house isn't yours, kind of thing. And I was like, no, but equally, me paying you rent is stopping me from buying. So what are we going to do about that? So, that money so we're like, well, let's save that money. And then if we break up, you can have that money and go and use it as a deposit. Which, it's kind of it was a very grown up financial, obviously I haven't moved out. So we're cool. And now I'm married, so half the house is mine.
Excellent.
So that's all been sewn up. It's very easy to be embarrassed about money, but I think it's the more secrecy around it, the more mystical power it has. Money is for many people, we've talked about the fact that over £50,000 a year, or whatever it is, doesn't really make you happy. But if you are very competitive and want to show how successful you are, money is a counterable, measurable, displayable score that says, ha ha, look at me, I've got 1 billion, ha ha ha. And there is no other, you can't show people how happy you are. You can't go, you can't talk about, it's very hard to say how much influence you have or what, I think we need to invent a new measuring system.
Well, this is exactly
for success.
There was a School of Life video on this saying kind of more or less the same thing. And the problem with that as well is, so money is now being kind of distorted to two purposes. Like on the one hand, it's the thing that is needed to, it's this understanding we have between each other to sort of distribute wealth and try and kind of keep things working for everyone. But then it's this completely twisted, distorted, exaggerating thing where the meaning of it, the meaning of some of these numbers is so sort of detached from the reality of what it could be to, a family in real life that isn't in that realm. It's just a really unfortunate kind of like twisting of what that thing is, isn't it? To use it for that second purpose of status and like keeping score.
Yeah, it's like I mean, nobody needs £1 billion or dollars for any currency, maybe $1 billion something, but any reasonable kind of currency. Nobody needs $1 billion. I can't even. One of the things Marcus and I did at one point when we started working at Canonical was like, can you picture this amount of money? Like, what does it even look like? Can you in a room? How big does the room need to be? But it's like an unimaginable amount of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, even when you start talking in the thousands of pounds, even though that's kind of what you earn every month, it's like they're big numbers. It's like you get 100,000, million, $1 billion. It's just, you just can't.
It's a lot of synthesizers, I'm telling you. That's way more synthesizers than I can realistically employ.
It's a lot of organic pomegranate farm to add to my 280 trees, little tiny trees they are still. I went to see them the other day. But, you know, it's just a lot of stuff. So how do you replace that? How do you go, look, here's everything you could ever want to buy whilst you're alive. Now we're going to take the rest of it, but we're going to leave you with a thing that you can hold up and we'll all know that you're worth $1 billion.
That
of
you're
them.
better than the person with only 900,000 of the thing.
Yeah. Or,
So can we-
you know, I don't know how we come up with that. That's what we need to invent.
Hi, this is Michael on my own. I've been editing this podcast. We realised we couldn't really record again next week, so this is going to be a two-parter. So we're going to sort of do our Happy New Year stuff, because this will be coming out just as the New Year comes in, and I'm doing this on New Year's Day. But we will be back next week with part 2 of this money episode. So, yeah. So, you got any New Year's Eve plans and
No.
New Year's
Oh, no.
resolutions?
Our New Year's Eve plans are we've not been drinking very much alcohol at all recently, so we've got a bottle of wine that we've saved, and we brought a couple of little individual Christmas puddings with us, so we're going to have those, yeah, we'll probably go to. I kind of used to get excited about New Year's Eve, but Nick's never been into it, and I've sort of fallen to his side of the fence. Yes. You going to any party? Anything exciting?
I have been invited. We're just gonna chill. I think we're gonna stay in. I have been invited to a sort of a secret techno rave.
Whoa.
I've been invited to a secret techno party and also to a sort of board game night. Both of which I'm sort of happy, you know, in previous years I would have gone to, but this year I think I'm just happy to have a cosy night in and just not worry too much about all this. We'll look out the window at some fireworks. That's fine. If you like the podcast,
you can find me at Ivanka on Twitter and ivanka.blog.
And you can find me at Michael Forrest on Twitter and michaelforrestmusic.com.
You can find us both at grandpodcast.com and email us at hello@grandpodcast.com.
And you can support us on Patreon with grandpodcast.com/pledge or .com sledge. Is this going to be? There's going to be I promise you, T-shirts of this before the year is out. Just
T-shirts
sledge
of what?
and the logo.
Sledge.
Okay. And please, tweet us. Please do, and email us with your thoughts. We still don't quite have the numbers to kind of get any nice iTunes podcasts analytics yet. But yeah, if you do want to find us on Apple Podcasts and give us a review, that would be great. Because that helps us get surfaced, I understand. I also put us on Stitcher, so we're on there now, which...
What's Stitcher?
It's another thing, and I think it might be a bit more cross-platform. I think it might be how Android people get podcasts. Not sure. Thanks for listening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Happy 2018.
Happy 2018.
Yeah.